3 years of being the family joke ended the night she kissed a poster in the dark. Her sister's laugh still rang in her ears. "You're embarrassing yourself," when a low voice cut through the silence behind her. The Korean superstar she had never met in real life stepped out of the shadows, looked at the lipstick mark on his own face and whispered, "She can kiss me anytime." By morning the girl who collected posters was the woman the whole world watched him choose. And the family that had laughed the loudest never called her embarrassing again. Chapter 1 Foot. Nia Carter stood in the narrow hallway of her sister's apartment in Atlanta, the half-empty moving boxes still stacked against the wall like quiet accusations. It had been 11 months since the divorce papers were signed. 11 months of sleeping on a pull-out couch that dug into her lower back every night. 11 months of hearing the same sentence in different voices. "You're too old to start over. You're too picky. You're embarrassing yourself." Tonight the sentence came from her sister's mouth, sharp and laughing. Keisha leaned against the kitchen doorway, phone already raised like a weapon. The poster of the Korean superstar, Park Ji-woon, global chart topper, the man whose face had been on Nia's phone lock screen for 3 years, was still slightly crooked on the living room wall. A faint smudge of Nia's lip gloss remained near the corner of his mouth. "You're embarrassing yourself kissing a poster," Keisha said, the words landing exactly the way they always did, loud enough for the neighbors to hear if they wanted to. At 42. With a grown son who already knows his mama collects fantasies. "What is wrong with you?" Nia didn't answer. She had learned that answering only fed it. She simply reached up, straightened the poster with careful fingers, and wiped the glossy mark away with the sleeve of her worn cardigan. The paper felt thin under her touch. Almost fragile. Like everything else she still allowed herself to want. Keisha's laugh followed her into the bathroom. "You know he's never going to look at someone like you, right? Those men marry models. Or actresses. Or girls half your age who still have a waistline. You're out here kissing paper like it's going to kiss you back." Nia closed the door. Locked it. Sat on the closed toilet lid and pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes until the burning stopped. 42. 11 months divorced. One son in college who called every Sunday and still asked if she was okay for real. A part-time administrative job that paid just enough to keep the lights on and the student loans from defaulting. And a secret so small and ridiculous she had never said it out loud. For 3 years she had whispered goodnight to a man who did not know she existed. She waited until the apartment went quiet. Until Keisha's bedroom door clicked shut and the television in the living room switched to some late-night show. Then Nia stepped back into the hallway, barefoot on the cold laminate, and stood in front of the poster again. The hallway light was off. Only the blue glow from the television reached this far. In that soft darkness, Park Ji-woon's printed eyes looked almost alive. Almost kind. Nia rose onto her toes the way she always did, quick, quiet, ashamed, and pressed her lips to the paper one more time. Soft. Brief. The way a person kisses something they know they are not allowed to keep. She never heard the front door open. She never heard the soft footsteps stop 3 feet behind her. She only heard the low, amused voice that cut through the silence like it had been waiting for this exact second. "You're embarrassing yourself kissing a poster," the voice repeated almost gently. Then closer, "She can kiss me anytime." Nia froze. The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. Her heart slammed once, hard enough to hurt. Slowly, so slowly she felt every vertebra protest. She turned around. Park Ji-woon stood in the open doorway of her sister's apartment, travel coat still on, security detail hovering just outside in the hallway. The same face from the poster. The same mouth she had just kissed. Only this one was real, slightly curved at one corner, and looking directly at her like she was the only person in the building who mattered. Behind him, Keisha's bedroom door flew open. But Nia could not look away from the man who had just stolen her sister's cruelest sentence and turned it into something that sounded like a promise. Chapter 2 Foot. The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds. 4 seconds in which Nia's mind tried and failed to invent any explanation that did not involve the global superstar Park Ji-woon standing in her sister's doorway after watching her kiss his face on paper. Keisha recovered first. "Oh my God," she whispered, then louder. "Oh my God. Is this real? Are you, sir, Mr. Park? Can we?" Her phone was already rising again, hands shaking so hard the camera shook with them. Ji-woon's security stepped half a pace forward. One quiet look from him stopped them. He did not look at the phone. He did not look at Keisha. His eyes stayed on Nia the way a man looks at something he has already decided belongs in his next hour. I knocked, he said, voice low, accented calm. The door was open. I heard my name. Then I heard the rest. Nia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She was still standing barefoot on cold laminate, cardigan sleeve still damp from wiping lipstick off paper, 42 years old and suddenly 12 again. Caught, exposed, ridiculous. I can explain, she managed. The words sounded small even to her. You don't have to. He stepped fully inside. The apartment seemed to shrink around him. 6'1" of quiet, expensive black travel coat still on, the kind of presence that made ordinary rooms look temporary. But I would like to hear why you kissed me like that when you thought no one was watching. Keisha made a sound somewhere between a squeak and a prayer. She collects your posters. She's been doing it for years. She's divorced and she sleeps on my couch and she... Keisha. Nia's voice cut sharper than she intended. Stop. Ji-woon finally glanced at the sister. The glance lasted less than a second. It was polite. It was final. Then he looked back at Nia as if the rest of the room had been politely dismissed. I have a car downstairs, he said. And approximately 19 minutes before my team notices I left the floor above without telling them. There is a private lounge in this building that my company rented for the week. It has walls. And quiet. I would like to talk to you there. Alone. Power imbalance, clean and undeniable. He was not asking. He was offering a door. And the only person who could walk through it was the woman who had just been called embarrassing for wanting him. Nia's pulse hammered in her throat. Every practical instinct she had spent 11 months sharpening screamed the same warning. This is how women like you get turned into someone's funny story. Smile, apologize, close the door, go back to the pull-out couch. Instead she heard herself ask, why? Ji-woon's mouth curved, the same small almost smile from every red carpet photograph. Only this time it was aimed at her alone. Because, he said simply, I have been kissed by thousands of cameras. I have never been kissed like I was something someone still believed in. He tilted his head toward the crooked poster. That felt different. I want to know if the real thing feels the same. Behind him, Keisha's phone finally lowered. Her face had gone through shock, opportunity, and something sharper. Jealousy maybe, or the beginning of fear that the family joke was about to become the family miracle. Nia looked at the man who had stolen her sister's cruelest sentence and turned it into an invitation. Then she looked at the poster still hanging slightly crooked on the wall. The paper version suddenly looked flat. Small. Finished. She did not remember deciding. She only remembered sliding her feet into the first pair of shoes by the door, pulling the cardigan tighter around herself, and walking past her sister without another word. Ji-woon stepped aside to let her pass, then followed. The security detail closed ranks behind them like a quiet black wave. As the apartment door clicked shut, Nia heard Keisha's voice one last time, soft, stunned, and already rewriting the story for later. She actually left with him. Nia did not look back. 19 minutes, he had said. She had the strange, terrifying feeling that 19 minutes might be long enough to change the next 19 years. Chapter 3 Foot. The private lounge occupied the entire west corner of the 12th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the Atlanta skyline at 1:14 a.m. The city glittered below like it had no idea a global superstar was currently watching a divorced administrative assistant try not to fall apart in a borrowed cardigan. Ji-woon closed the door himself. The soft click sounded final. Security remained outside. No phones. No cameras. No witnesses. Nia stood near the window because standing near the expensive leather sofa felt too much like accepting something she had not earned. Her arms were folded tight across her chest. The faint taste of paper and old lip gloss still lingered on her mouth. I shouldn't have come, she said first. Yet you did. He moved to the small bar cart, poured 2 glasses of water and set one on the low table closest to her. He did not sit. He leaned against the edge of the desk instead, giving her the higher ground and the clearer exit. Most people in your position would have stayed in the hallway apologizing until I left. I'm still apologizing. Internally. A quiet breath of almost laughter left him. Good. That means you still have standards. Silence stretched. Outside, a distant siren rose and fell. Inside, the only sound was the low hum of the climate system and Nia's own pulse. Ji-woon spoke again, slower this time. 3 years ago I received a letter. Handwritten. No glitter. No perfume. No demand for a meet and greet or a signed album. Just 6 pages from a woman in Atlanta who said she played my music the night her marriage ended, and that the song kept her from calling him when she was weakest. She wrote that she did not want anything from me. She only wanted me to know that the work mattered to someone who had stopped believing most things mattered. Nia's fingers tightened on her own elbows. She remembered the letter. She remembered writing it on the floor of her old bedroom the week the divorce papers arrived, then almost throwing it away. She had mailed it on a Tuesday because Tuesdays felt less dramatic than Mondays. I kept that letter, Ji-woon continued. It is in a locked drawer in my Seoul apartment under a false bottom. I have read it 47 times. I know the exact shape of the ink where your hand shook on the 3rd page. When my team told me we would be in Atlanta for 72 hours, I asked for the address on the envelope. I told them it was for a private thank you visit. They think I am sentimental. They are not entirely wrong. He looked at her directly. I stood outside that door for almost 2 minutes tonight because I heard your sister's voice. Then I heard you. And then I watched you kiss the paper version of me like I was still allowed to be real to someone. His voice dropped. Do you understand how rare that is for me? Nia finally turned from the window. The skyline lights caught the side of his face and made him look both younger and older than the posters. You're Park Ji-woon, she said quietly. People scream your name in stadiums. Women throw themselves at stages. You have everything. I have everything that can be purchased or scheduled, he corrected. I do not have a single person who has seen me without the choreography. Until tonight, the closest I came was 6 pages of honest handwriting from a woman who never expected a reply. He pushed off the desk and took 1 step closer. Not enough to crowd. Enough to make the air change. I am 35 years old. I have been famous since I was 19. In that time I have been engaged once, for brand synergy, and unmarried the rest. My company prefers it that way. A single idol sells more fantasy. The problem is that I am no longer selling the fantasy to myself. I am tired, Nia. And tonight I watched a woman who has every reason to be bitter still choose to believe in something soft. I want to know what that feels like from the other side. Nia's throat felt tight. The power imbalance was still there. His name, his money, his ability to clear a floor of a building with 1 phone call. But something underneath it had shifted. He was not offering rescue. He was offering recognition. And recognition, she was discovering, was far more dangerous. What exactly are you asking for? She whispered. Ji-woon held her gaze for a long moment. Then he answered with the same calm he had used in the hallway. 19 minutes became 12 while we were walking. I have a flight to New York in 11 hours for a closed performance. After that I return to Seoul. I am asking for the rest of tonight. No cameras. No announcements. No promises I cannot keep yet. Just the chance to talk to the woman who kissed me like I was still human, and to find out if she will still look at me the same way when the sun comes up. He glanced at the untouched glass of water on the table, then back at her. You can still leave. The door is not locked. Security will take you downstairs and never speak of this. Or you can sit down, drink the water, and tell me why a woman who has been laughed at for 3 years still bothers to believe in paper versions of men like me. Nia looked at the door. Then she looked at the man who had kept her letter in a locked drawer for 3 years. Her feet did not move toward the exit. Instead she crossed the room, sat on the edge of the leather sofa, and reached for the glass with hands that were no longer quite steady. Okay, she said softly. But if I start crying, you are not allowed to put it in a song. Ji-woon's smile this time was real, small, and almost private. Deal, he said, and sat across from her as the Atlanta night held its breath outside the glass. Chapter 4 Foot. They talked until the skyline began to thin from solid black into the first bruised gray of approaching dawn. Nia told him about the pull-out couch that left a permanent ache in her left hip. About the student loan balance that still sat at $41,000 even after 11 months of minimum payments. About her son Malik, who was 20 and studying mechanical engineering in North Carolina and still texted her every Sunday night with the same 2 words. You good? She told him she always answered yes, even on the nights the answer was closer to no. Ji-woon listened the way most men only pretended to. He did not interrupt. He did not offer solutions. When she finished, he simply said, he is lucky. Most sons do not get a mother who still knows how to hope out loud. In return he told her things that never reached the interviews. The year he turned 29 and collapsed backstage in Tokyo from exhaustion so complete he could not feel his own hands. The engagement the company arranged with an actress he had met twice. Once for the contract signing, once for the stage dinner that leaked to the press. The way he had sat in a hotel bathroom the night before the announcement and stared at his own face in the mirror until it stopped looking like a person. He told her that the letter she wrote was the first time in years someone had spoken to the man instead of the schedule. At 3:47 a.m. his phone vibrated against the glass table. The sound was small. Still changed the air. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening once, then turned the phone face down. "Hi manager," he said. "They have noticed I am not on the 12th floor. I have 11 minutes before they send someone to check on my safety." Nia stood immediately. The cardigan suddenly felt too thin. "Then you should go. I can take the stairs. No one has to know I was here." "No," the word was quiet but absolute. He rose as well, slower than she had. "That is the part one I'm finished with. The part where I pretend the real conversations did not happen so the fantasy stays clean for everyone else." He stepped closer. Not touching. Close enough that she could smell the faint cedar and clean skin beneath the travel coat scent. "I have a private terminal at the airport at 12:40 p.m. There is a second seat on the flight to New York that is not on any public manifest. After the performance I return to Seoul the next morning. I am not asking you to come to Korea tonight. I am asking you to take the New York flight with me. 12 hours. One city neither of us lives in. No sister. No manager in the next room. Just time." Nia's pulse slammed once against her throat. The practical list wrote itself in her head at speed. Malik. The part-time job she could not afford to lose. The fact that she owned exactly one blazer nice enough for an airport. The certainty that Keisha was already awake and rewriting the night into something she could sell for attention. "I can't just disappear," she whispered. "You would not be disappearing. You would be choosing." His voice dropped. "And if you say no, I will still walk you downstairs. I will still make sure no photograph of you leaves this building. But I will also spend the next 11 hours knowing I had one night to stop performing and I let the schedule win again." The phone vibrated a second time. Harder. Ji-woon did not look at it. He watched her instead, waiting the same way he had watched her in the hallway when she was still barefoot and ashamed. Somewhere below them an elevator chimed. Time, which had felt suspended for hours, suddenly remembered it was expensive. Nia looked at the man who had kept her letter in a locked drawer for 3 years. Then she looked at the door that would lead back to the pull-out couch and the sister who had called her embarrassing. Her voice, when it came, was steadier than she expected. "I need to be at my son's campus on Sunday. Non-negotiable." Ji-woon's eyes flickered. Calculation, then acceptance. "New York to Raleigh is a 1-hour flight. I will have you there by Saturday night." He paused. "Is that a yes?" The elevator chimed again, closer. Nia exhaled once, long and shaky, and nodded. "Yes," she said. "But if this turns into a song, I want royalties." The smile that broke across his face was quick and real and almost boyish. "Negotiated," he said and reached for his phone at last. "Now we have approximately 4 minutes to get you out of this building before my manager sees your face and starts calculating press risk. Stay close to me. Do not look at the cameras in the lobby. And Nia." He waited until her eyes met his. "Whatever your sister says when she finds out, you are not embarrassing yourself. Not tonight. Not with me." Then he opened the door and the real world, managers, elevators, and the first gray edge of morning, came rushing back in. Chapter 5 Foot. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby at 4:09 a.m. 2 of Ji-woon's security detail were already waiting, faces carefully blank. A third man, taller, older, wearing the kind of dark coat that cost more than Nia's monthly rent, stood near the revolving doors with a phone pressed to his ear. The moment he saw Ji-woon, the phone lowered. "Hyung," the man said in rapid Korean, then switched to English when his eyes landed on Nia. "We have a schedule. The car has been waiting 19 minutes. "Who is?" "A guest," Ji-woon answered, still walking. His hand hovered near the small of Nia's back without quite touching her, guiding without claiming. "She is coming with us to the airport. Adjust the manifest." The older man's gaze flicked over Nia's cardigan, the simple shoes, the absence of any designer anything. Calculation moved behind his eyes like weather. That is not possible on this little notice. The New York performance has closed clearance. Additional names require. Then unclose it. Ji-woon's voice did not rise. It simply removed the option of discussion. You have done more for less. Do it again. They were halfway across the marble lobby when the second obstacle arrived in the form of Keisha, still in pajama pants and a silk scarf, phone in one hand and Nia's spare apartment key in the other. She must have taken the stairs. Nia. Her voice carried across the empty lobby like a thrown plate. You do not just walk out of my house at 4 a.m. with a stranger. Do you know what this looks like? Do you know what people are going to say when I... Ji-woon stopped. The security detail adjusted without being told, creating a loose perimeter that still left Keisha visible but no longer close enough to touch her sister. He turned only his head. Miss Carter's sister, correct? Keisha's mouth opened then closed. The phone in her hand tilted upward almost on instinct. Ji-woon's security chief stepped half a pace forward. The phone lowered again. I am going to say this once, June said, still calm, still quiet enough that the words felt private even in the open lobby. Your sister is not a stranger to me. She has not done anything that requires an audience. If a single photograph, message, or funny story about tonight leaves your phone, my team will make sure the only thing anyone remembers is how quickly the story disappeared. Am I clear? Keisha's face went through 3 expressions in under 2 seconds. Outrage, calculation, then something closer to fear. She looked at Nia, searching for the version of her sister who always backed down, who always smoothed things over, who always chose peace over dignity. Nia did not give it to her. I'll text you when I land, Nia said. Her voice surprised her with its steadiness. And Keisha, don't call Malik. I'll tell him myself. Something in Keisha's expression fractured. For a moment she looked younger, almost lost. Then the moment passed. She turned on her heel and walked back toward the stairwell without another word. The manager cleared his throat. We are now 23 minutes behind. The pilot has filed the new passenger. But sir, once she is on that plane the company will have questions. The board will have questions. The fans. The fans have me for the performance, June cut in. After that they have whatever version of the story we decide to give them. Right now I am taking a woman who has spent 3 years being laughed at for believing in me, and I am giving her 12 hours in a city where no one knows her sister's laugh. That is the only decision that requires my attention at 4:14 in the morning. He finally looked at Nia fully. The lobby lights were harsh. She knew what she must look like. No makeup, sleep-creased cardigan, hair that had not seen a proper brush since yesterday afternoon. She waited for the flicker of regret, the polite recalculation. It did not come. Last chance, he said, soft enough that only she could hear. Once we clear the doors, the night becomes a day and the day becomes real. You can still go upstairs. I will have a car take you anywhere you want. No consequences. Nia thought of the pull-out couch. The student loan balance. The way her sister's voice had sounded saying embarrassing. She thought of the letter she had written on the floor 3 years ago, never expecting it to be read even once, let alone 47 times. She stepped forward until she was close enough to see the faint exhaustion under his eyes that no amount of staging could fully hide. I'm already through the doors, she said. Ji-woon's smile was small and tired and entirely unperformed. Then we run, he answered, and the glass revolving doors of the building pushed them out into the cold Atlanta morning where 2 black cars were already waiting, engines low, ready to turn 12 borrowed hours into something neither of them could take back. Chapter 6 Foot. The private terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson was a different country. No public announcements. No fluorescent glare. Just low lighting, thick carpet, and the soft scent of polished wood and expensive coffee. Nia sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than her last 3 paychecks combined, hands wrapped around a cup she had not sipped, watching Ji-woon speak in quiet Korean to the older manager from the lobby. The man's face stayed carefully neutral, but the tension in his shoulders said everything. This was not approved, this was not clean, and someone higher up was already going to be angry. At 5:22 a.m. they boarded. The aircraft was small, sleek, and silent once the doors sealed. 8 seats. 4 of them empty. Ji-woon took the one beside her instead of the one that faced forward like a throne. He did not reach for her hand. He simply sat close enough that their shoulders nearly touched every time the plane adjusted. For the first 20 minutes neither of them spoke. Atlanta fell away beneath them in a grid of dying streetlights. Nia watched the wing cut through thin cloud and tried to convince her nervous system that she was still the same woman who had woken up yesterday on a pull-out couch. Her phone vibrated in her cardigan pocket. You really left with him. Do you know how this looks? People are going to talk. Malik deserves better than a mother who chases celebrities. A second message followed before she could lock the screen. I have the Ring camera footage from the hallway. Just so you know. Nia's stomach dropped. She angled the phone away, but Ji-woon had already seen the change in her face. Show me, he said quietly. She hesitated, then turned the screen. He read the messages once. His expression did not shift, but something behind his eyes went cold and precise. He took his own phone out, typed a short message in Korean and sent it. 30 seconds later a reply came through. He showed her the translation without being asked. Ring camera access for that unit has been remotely disabled. Footage from 1 a.m. onward is no longer recoverable. Confirming. Nia stared at him. You can do that? My team can do that, he corrected. I simply decided it was necessary. He locked his phone and set it face down. Your sister is allowed to be angry. She is not allowed to turn you into content. The rest of the flight passed in a strange, fragile peace. He asked about Malik's engineering program. She asked about the first time he ever wrote a song he was actually proud of. He told her it was the one she had quoted in her letter 3 years ago. She did not cry, but it was a near thing. They landed at a private airstrip outside New York at 7:41 a.m. local time. 2 more black cars. Different security faces. The same careful distance from the ordinary world. The closed performance was scheduled for 2 p.m. in a restored theater in Manhattan. No press, no public tickets, only industry and selected partners. Ji-woon's team had secured an entire floor of a nearby hotel under a corporate alias. Nia was given a key card and a soft instruction. Rest, shower, eat anything she wanted from the menu. He would come for her at 1:10. She stood under the hotel shower for a long time, letting the water run hotter than necessary, trying to wash off the feeling that she had stepped into someone else's life and the Real owner might notice at any second. At 12:58 her phone lit up again. Unknown number. Then another. Then a third. Keisha had not stayed quiet. She had called 2 of their cousins and one of Nia's old co-workers. The messages were already shifting from concern to something sharper. Is it true? Are you really with him? Send a picture or we won't believe it. Nia turned the phone off completely. When the knock came at 1:10 she opened the door to find Ji-woon in stage black. Simple, expensive, the kind of clothes that made ordinary fabric look like a different species. He looked at her. She had borrowed a plain black dress from the emergency wardrobe his team kept for unexpected guests, and something in his face eased. You ready? He asked. No, she answered honestly. But I'm coming anyway. They rode the elevator in silence. In the underground garage the air felt colder. As they approached the car, the older manager stepped into their path one last time. Once you walk into that theater with her, he said in low, urgent English, the secrecy ends. Someone will see. Someone will talk. The company has already asked me to remind you of the clause in your contract about brand image and personal associations during promotional periods. Boone met his eyes. Then remind the company of the clause that says I am still a human being between performances. He placed a hand lightly at Nia's back, this time actually touching her, and guided her into the car. We will be in the private box. No introductions. No photographs. After the final song I will bring her out the same way we came in. That is the plan. The manager looked at Nia for a long second, as if measuring how much damage one ordinary woman could do to a carefully built empire. Then he stepped aside. As the car pulled into Manhattan traffic, Nia's switched-off phone sat heavy in her bag like a live wire. Somewhere in Atlanta her sister was still talking. Somewhere above them the company was already calculating risk. And in less than an hour she would be sitting in the dark watching the man who had kept her letter for 3 years perform for a room full of people who would never know her name. 12 hours he had promised. They were already more than halfway through. And the hardest part, the part where the night had to become a real day and the real day had to survive contact with the world, had only just begun. Chapter 7. The private box sat high on the left side of the restored theater, behind dark glass that turned the audience below into a soft, glittering blur. No one could see in. Nia could see everything. At 2:03 p.m. the lights dropped. A single spotlight found the center of the stage. Park Ji-woon stepped into it without introduction, without the usual explosion of screams, and the room fell into the kind of silence that only money and power could buy. He sang 4 songs. Nia had heard every one of them before, on repeat in her old car, through cheap earbuds on the nights the pull-out couch felt especially narrow, in the background while she filled out yet another extension request for the student loans. Hearing them live from 40 feet away, while the man who had written them knew she was in the building, was a different species of experience entirely. On the 3rd song, the one she had quoted in her letter 3 years ago, he changed a single line. Where the original lyric said, "I keep the light on for no one," he sang low and clear, "I keep the light on for one." He did not look up at the box. He did not have to. The words landed in the dark like they had been aimed. Nia's hands stayed folded tightly in her lap. She did not cry. She was afraid that if she started she would not be able to stop in a place where tears would be noticed. The final note faded. The industry audience offered polished, measured applause. Ji-woon gave a short bow, spoke 2 polite sentences in English about gratitude and closed doors that still matter, and left the stage. The whole performance had lasted 27 minutes. Backstage was a different temperature. Security moved like water around them. The older manager was already waiting in the narrow corridor, phone in hand, face tight. 3 separate people asked who was in the box, he said without preamble. I told them it was a regional partner. One of them has a photographer on staff. We need her out of the building in the next 8 minutes or the story stops being containable. Ji-woon did not slow down. The car is at the stage door. We leave the same way we came in. Nia walked between them, the borrowed black dress suddenly feeling like a costume that no longer fit. Every face they passed seemed to glance a second too long. She kept her eyes on the exit sign at the end of the hall and counted her own footsteps to stay calm. They almost made it. At the final turn before the stage door, a young woman in a headset, clearly part of the venue staff, stepped into their path with a bright, practiced smile and a phone already half raised. "Mr. Park, so sorry, I know this is closed, but my sister is a huge fan and if I could just..." Ji-woon's security moved, but not fast enough to stop the phone from capturing one frame. Ji-woon, the manager, and Nia slightly behind his shoulder, face visible in the harsh backstage light. The staffer's smile faltered when she registered the look on the security chief's face. The phone lowered. Apologies tumbled out. The photo was deleted in front of them. But everyone in the corridor had seen the exchange. The air had changed. In the car the silence was heavy. Ji-woon sat with his head tilted back against the seat, eyes closed for 3 full seconds before he opened them and looked at Nia. "I'm sorry," he said. "That should not have happened. It's not your fault. It is my world." He exhaled. "And my world is very good at turning people into content the moment they stand too close to me." Her phone, still powered off in her bag, felt like it was burning. Somewhere in Atlanta, Keisha still had cousins and co-workers and a story she was clearly willing to tell. Somewhere above them, the company was already receiving messages about an unidentified woman in a private box. The 12 hours they had bargained for were collapsing into something smaller and sharper. The car merged into Manhattan traffic. Afternoon light slanted between buildings. Ji-woon reached over and for the first time since the lounge in Atlanta took her hand. His palm was warm. "Steady. I have the hotel until tomorrow morning," he said. "After that I fly to Seoul. You need to be in Raleigh by Saturday night for Malik." That still stands. But the window just got narrower. If a single frame of that photo survived, the questions will start before we reach the hotel. "I need to know what you want to do when they do." Nia looked down at their joined hands. Her fingers looked ordinary against his. The same hands that had wiped lipstick off a paper poster less than 18 hours ago. She thought of the pull-out couch. The student loans. The way her sister had laughed. The letter that had been kept in a locked drawer for 3 years. The single changed lyric that still echoed in her chest. "I don't want to be a secret that has to be deleted," she said quietly. "But I also don't want to be the reason your world sets itself on fire. So you tell me the truth. How bad does this get if that photo exists?" Ji-woon was silent for several long seconds. When he finally spoke, the performer was gone. Only the man remained. If the photo exists, he said, the company will ask me to issue a statement that you are no one. A local contact. A non-story. They will want distance. Pling. Immediate. And if I refuse, he turned his head and met her eyes completely. Then I will have to decide in public whether the man who kept your letter is more important than the idol who is supposed to belong to everyone else. The car stopped at a light. Neither of them looked away. Outside, New York kept moving, indifferent and loud and entirely unaware that two people inside a black car had just reached the edge of the only question that still mattered. Nia's voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. Then I guess we find out what you decide. Chapter 8. The hotel suite felt too large for the amount of air left in it. Nia stood by the window with her arms wrapped around herself, watching late afternoon light move across the buildings. Behind her, Ji-woon finished a low, intense phone call in Korean. When he set the phone down, the silence that followed was heavier than any of the words had been. They have the frame, he said. Nia turned. The staff girl's phone? She deleted it in front of us. But someone else in that corridor had a secondary device. A single still image reached one of the smaller Korean gossip channels 20 minutes ago. Blurry. My face is clear. Yours is half-turned, but not unrecognizable if someone already knows what you look like. He exhaled. My company is requesting a statement within the hour. The draft they sent calls you a local acquaintance present in a professional capacity. They want distance. Pling. Immediate. Nia's throat tightened. The old familiar shame rose fast, the same heat that used to climb her neck when Keisha laughed, when the divorce papers landed, when she stood in front of a paper poster and still dared to want more. So that's the choice, she said quietly. You say I'm no one and the story dies. Or you don't, and it becomes something neither of us can control. Ji-woon walked toward her but stopped 3 feet away, giving her the space the company would never understand. There is a third option, he said. I refuse the statement. I say nothing tonight. Tomorrow morning I board the flight to Seoul as scheduled. You go to Raleigh to see Malik. And in 72 hours, when I am home and the first wave of speculation has peaked, I release one post. Not a denial. Not an explanation. Just the truth I am willing to stand on, that I have met someone real, that her name is Nia Carter, and that any further details belong to us alone until we decide otherwise. Nia stared at him. That will cost you. Yes. Your company will be angry. The board will call emergency meetings. Some sponsors will get nervous. A percentage of the fantasy-driven fans will feel betrayed. He held her gaze. I have spent 16 years belonging to everyone else. I am willing to spend the next 16 belonging at least in part to myself. And to the woman who kissed a poster of me like I was still allowed to be human. Her eyes burned. She blinked hard. And if the photo gets clearer? Keisha talks? If my name starts trending next to words like gold digger, or desperate, or embarrassing? Then I will still have told the truth, he said simply. And you will still know that the man who kept your letter for 3 years did not disappear the moment the cost became real. The sweet phone rang. Once. Twice. Ji-woon ignored it. His personal phone lit up with a string of Korean messages. He turned it face down without reading them. Nia pressed her fingers against her closed eyelids. When she opened them again, the city outside looked the same, but everything underneath it had shifted. I need you to understand something, she said. I have a son who still checks on me every Sunday. I have student loans and a part-time job and a sister who already thinks I am a cautionary tale. If this blows up, it does not just land on you. It lands on the version of me that has spent 11 months trying to become small enough to stop disappointing people. Ji-woon nodded once, slowly. I know. And you still want to do the post? I want to do the post, he said, because the alternative is looking you in the eye and calling you a local acquaintance. And I am finished lying about the things that actually matter. He stepped closer. This time she did not move back. I am not asking you to stand on a stage with me tomorrow. I am not asking you to move to Seoul or explain yourself to strangers. I am asking you to let me stop hiding the fact that you exist in my life. The rest we can decide at human speed. But the erasing stops here. Tonight. Nia's breath left her in a long, shaky stream. She thought of the pull-out couch. The crooked poster. The way her sister's voice had sounded saying, "You're embarrassing yourself." She thought of a locked drawer in a Seoul apartment that had held her handwriting like it was worth keeping. Then she looked at the man in front of her, exhausted, still in stage black, choosing the harder road in real time, and nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "No statement tonight. No calling me no one. And when you post, you tell the truth. Just not more of it than we can both survive." Ji-woon's shoulders dropped a fraction, the first real release of tension she had seen since the theater. "Deal," he said. He reached for her hand. This time she took it without hesitation. His fingers closed around hers, warm and certain. Outside, New York continued its indifferent evening rush. Inside the suite, two people had just stepped off the edge of the only version of the story that would have kept them safe. There would be consequences. They would face them in the morning. But for the first time since the hallway in Atlanta, Nia did not feel like she was borrowing someone else's night. He felt like she was finally inside her own. Chapter 9. 3 days later the post went up. It was simple. No stylized photo. No long caption designed to trend. Just a single image Ji-woon had taken in the New York hotel suite the morning after the performance. Nia standing at the window in the borrowed black dress, city light on her face, looking at something only she could see. Beneath it 2 lines in English and Korean. "Her name is Nia Carter. Some things are not for the schedule." The internet did what the internet does. Speculation. Outrage. Defense. Old clips of him resurfaced. Her name, her face, her sister's old public posts. Everything that could be dug up was dug up in under 6 hours. The company issued a carefully worded statement about respecting privacy. Sponsors went quiet. A percentage of fans declared themselves done. Ji-woon did not delete the post. He did not clarify further. He simply boarded his flight to Seoul as planned, and from the air he sent Nia one message. "Still true. Still worth it. Tell Malik I said the engineering program sounds excellent." Nia turned her phone face down and walked into the campus coffee shop in Raleigh where her son was already waiting. Malik listened to the entire story without interrupting. Atlanta, the poster, the letter, the 12 hours, the post. When she finished he sat back, long fingers wrapped around a cooling cup of coffee, and studied her the way he had since he was a boy who noticed too much. "You look different," he said finally. "Different how?" "Like you stopped apologizing for taking up space." He shrugged, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I'm 20, Ma. I can handle my mother being happy. Just, maybe warn me before the next global news cycle, yeah." Nia laughed for the first time in days. The sound felt unfamiliar and necessary. Keisha called that same evening. The conversation was short. "You made us look crazy," Keisha said. "No," Nia answered. "I stopped letting you decide what I look like." She paused. "The ring footage is gone. The story you wanted to tell is already smaller than the one that's true. I'm not coming back to the pull-out couch. And I need you to decide whether you're going to be my sister or my first critic. I only have room for one of those right now." There was a long silence. Then quieter. "Is he good to you?" "Yes." Another silence. "Hey." Then okay. It was not a full repair. It was a boundary. For the first time in years Nia let that be enough. 6 weeks later, the student loan balance that had sat at $41,000 was no longer hers to carry alone. Ji-woon did not pay it off in a grand gesture that would have made her feel purchased. Instead he had his legal team restructure it into a private, zero-interest arrangement that she would repay on terms she could actually meet, terms that no longer required her to choose between groceries and minimum payments. When she tried to protest he only said, "You carried it long enough. Let it be lighter. That is not ownership. That is arithmetic." She moved out of Keisha's apartment and into a small one-bedroom near Malik's campus for the rest of the semester. The first night she slept on a bed that did not dig into her hip. She lay awake staring at the ceiling and whispered thank you into the dark. Not to a poster, not to a fantasy, but to the version of herself that had finally stopped shrinking. Ji-woon flew in twice in those 6 weeks. Once for 36 hours between promotions. Once for a full weekend with no schedule at all. They did not announce anything further. They did not need to. The post had already done the work of refusing the erasure. Everything after that belonged to them. On the second visit they walked a quiet trail near the campus at dusk. Malik had gone back to his dorm after dinner, leaving them alone under a sky the color of old denim. At one point Nia stopped walking. Ji-woon turned. "What is it?" She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded square of paper, creased, slightly faded, the same 6 pages she had written on her bedroom floor 3 years earlier. She had asked him to bring the original from the locked drawer in Seoul. "I want to do it again," she said. "But this time you get to watch." She rose onto her toes and pressed her lips to his, soft, brief, exactly the way she had once kissed paper in a dark hallway. When she pulled back, his eyes were closed. When he opened them, the smile that broke across his face was the same one from the private lounge in Atlanta. Real, unperformed, and entirely hers. "Was that good enough?" she whispered. Ji-woon lifted a hand and brushed his thumb once across her lower lip, as if checking that she was still solid, still here, still choosing him in the open. "Yes," he said. "But I am going to need you to do it again tomorrow. And the day after that. And every day I am lucky enough to still be the man you reach for instead of the paper." Nia laughed against his mouth. Somewhere far behind them, a group of students called to each other on the path. Ordinary life, continuing. Ordinary life, finally large enough to hold her. She took his hand. They kept walking. And for the first time in a very long time, Nia Carter did not feel like she was surviving her own story. He felt like she was writing it. The end.